This movie is basically Ready or Not meets Kill Bill, and it's a lot of fun. Welcome to Bite Size Bunny, my name's Tony, and today we are going to be talking about They Will Kill You. In this film, we follow Asia Reeves, played by Zazie Beetz. And our lead character has landed a job as a maid at the most elite hotel in Manhattan. But things take a turn for the worst when it's revealed that the hotel is run by a satanic cult that has selected Asia for their next sacrificial ritual. The only problem is, Asia also happens to be a secret badass that is able to dispatch these cultists in the most gruesome ways possible. This one has a very similar premise to Ready or Not, which the sequel for that just released last weekend. But then when it comes to the action and violence, it feels very similar to what you would expect out of a Kill Bill movie. It is hyper violent, with blood spraying all over the place as characters are having their limbs dismembered and they're having their heads decapitated from their bodies, while also having kung fu and martial arts action sequences sprinkled throughout the film as they are accompanied by the retro sound effects that add a level of camp to the experience. There is some excellently choreographed action sequences throughout the entire film. I was pleasantly surprised by just how well shot the action sequences are, as well as how creative they get at times. The first action sequence was so well done, I was actually worried that was going to be as good as it got with this movie, but they still managed to have some tricks and surprises up their sleeve. And I gotta say, Zazie Beetz is one of the most underrated actors working right now. Not only does she deliver a compelling performance that carries this movie, but she also does a lot of her own stunt work in this, and she kicks ass. I was blown away by some of the stuff she was able to pull off in this movie, and every time I see her in a new project, I always find myself wondering why she isn't in more things. She's always a highlight in anything she does, and she was really great here in the leading role. When it comes to the other performances, Patterson Joseph and Tom Felton were two of the other standouts for me, even though they play smaller roles here. When it comes to the rest of the cast, I think they do a solid job with what they're given to work with, even if their characters aren't that memorable. Unfortunately, the biggest issue I have with They Will Kill You is how they go about telling the story here. I think the overall premise is a lot of fun, and there's some clever reveals and plot beats that kept me invested in everything going on and excited to see where everything was going next. But the movie is consistently getting in its own way, and it definitely bogs down the pacing. Anytime the movie is sharing a new piece of information about this hotel or this cult, it screeches to a halt as it decides to exposition dump everything on the viewer. And it would be one thing if they had a scene or maybe two scenes that pause to kind of explain the rules of the world to us and then go back to telling the story in an organic way that feels natural. But it doesn't do that. Instead, anytime a new piece to the puzzle is presented to us, the movie stops to explain everything that's going on and then kind of recap everything that we've been told before. And it does that multiple times throughout its story. It almost feels like a Netflix production where they have that rule of having to explain the story and what's going on to you every 10 to 15 minutes. Except this isn't a Netflix movie, and somehow that makes that choice feel even more bizarre. It almost feels like the writer didn't trust the audience enough to pay attention to the story, and that they were going to get sidetracked by all the action that was going on. It feels like this would have benefited from an additional rewrite to kind of go through and clean things up, maybe edit out some of the unnecessary recaps that take place throughout the movie, and make the story beats that transpire throughout the narrative not feel like they're all just exposition dump after exposition dump. That being said though, I really did have fun with this one. It's not perfect, it's definitely got its flaws, but I do think there is still plenty to enjoy here. I'm gonna be giving They Will Kill You a 6.5 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. And what is your favorite action horror movie? I'd love to know.